A milkman that just happened to be a zombie came to deliver milk to this house and killed everybody in it. We thought, hey, that sounds stupid and funny. We had all afternoon, let's go do it.
Early to mid 80s, video was kind of a new thing.
I love eggs in the morning, I love eggs in the morning.
There was a lot of I don't know why everything was like we were gagging or something.
Right, strike that.
Every movie we made back then was some sort of a sword or a gun or something blowing up and ketchup flying all over the place.
Don't put me on that.
I'm amazed no one ended up blind or deaf or missing a finger.
Give me that, Bubba.
Oh, why was he Bubba? But he was a brilliant guy at making centrifuges. Gotta get the machete.
I think that line was basically the product of me having, all of 10 minutes explanation.
The accident with Greg was not a good thing.
I can't even imagine where, how many hits on YouTube that would have been.
It was quite idiotic.
Some kid standing there with his shirt, acting like he was a zombie, and all of a sudden his arm completely blows off.
Oh, scratch that. That's not what happened.
Whatever you say. Yeah.
I was like, what is a yep?
Dad, I don't think I'm ready to. Damn it! Oh, goodness! I must have burnt its toes!
Making movies was fun. It was work, but it was fun.
It's only so long you can play Asteroids or Tank or Pong. Why did we make these movies? I think that we made them because we were sort of bored, and this was something that interested us. We were creating our own reality, and instead of some make-believe world or whatever, we were making it on a movie, and it generally made people laugh. I grew up in an environment that was pretty much perfect by anybody's definition, but you don't realize at the time until you grow up. I mean, we basically had everything we needed.
Lots of woods and forests and bayous and empty lots and office buildings, and we had access to everything.
I guess among other things, the obvious thing is we had video cameras and these kinds of things that a lot of people our age didn't have. We were nerdy kids. Most of us were in band.
I was in Boy Scouts. I played Dungeons and Dragons with my friends. I was not the guy that you hung out with if you wanted to climb the social ladder.
We weren't the cool guys, the quarterbacks of the football team or anything in high school, but we weren't losers or druggies or weird. We just kind of fit in the same group,
John is my twin brother. We grew up together. We did a lot of things together. We had some different friends, but for the most part, wherever John went, I went, and wherever I went, John went. John would spend hours and hours with these little clay figures, and through stop-start animation, he would make these little sequences of clay figures doing things. And at some point, that morphed into us actually participating in movie making. With most of these movies, my involvement on the front end was very little, and John and maybe Greg and Steven would cook up some idea for a movie, and they inevitably would cast me in some kind of goofy, cagey role.
Even though he may not necessarily have been involved with the front end or the planning stages of these movies that we made, we'd bring him in as an actor, and he'd often just steal the show.
My first impression of Steve was that he was a cool guy, but he was also kind of a little off and nerdy like most of us were.
Obviously a very smart guy. Steven, you could always tell.
Even though Steven went to a different school, he and I were hanging out all the time. And it really was just a matter of time before the two of us were making films together.
Greg appeared one day, I think with John, and this old beat-up car full of Jack-in-the-Box wrappers.
Greg is one of the most talented people I've ever met. He taught himself how to draw. He taught himself how to play the drums. He taught himself how to surf.
Greg certainly had his moments. He would kind of have these little fits of energy.
Doc, you pig!
Greg immediately showed me his contraption, which allowed him to drive the car without his hands. He'd attached a bungee cord on either side of the steering wheel that went underneath his legs, and he could move his legs and steer the car. And I think we almost ran into a stop sign or something.
All that brilliant creative energy had to go somewhere. And what that meant, if you were hanging out with Greg, there was never a dull moment. And sometimes it meant trouble. I remember, for instance, we were working on the Wisconsin Weed Eater Massacre, and he wanted to be the lawn man. And he sees this Mexican-style blanket on my father's sofa, and he picks it up without asking and just cuts a hole in it and sticks his head through the hole, and that's what he was going to wear. Well, later I was showing the movie to my dad, and he just looks at it and he goes, "That son of a bitch is wearing my blanket."
We're all at that Whataburger in Memorial City. We're like, hey, let's make a movie this afternoon, and we're sitting there, what should we make it about? And just out of left field, I think it might have been me even that said, how about if it's a guy delivering milk, but he's a zombie?
I think I was out of town or something. I came back and it's like, oh, we made this great movie, The Undead Milkman. And I watched it, I was like, oh, that's awesome. But, you know, it had a couple of flaws in it. All horror movies have some introduction where the main characters are introduced and their flaws are shown, and it's sort of obvious who's going to get killed. And so that's what we felt we had to do.
We did a really god-awful version the first time around, and we liked it so much that we redid the whole movie.
I don't remember ever seeing a lot of detailed scripts. It was, we were all pretty much winging it for the most part.
It was a joke to call it a script. It was like I think a one-page piece of notebook paper that we wrote on both sides. And it was sort of just an outline of the movie. In this scene, this is going to happen. You do that. You say this. And we would go ahead and film it.
I'm just getting pretty sick and tired of it. Why don't you go out and get a job?
I had a home video camera, the kind you put on your shoulder and look through the thing and da-da-da.
This dinosaur in terms of a camera equipment. It was cutting edge at the time, but by today's standards, it was ridiculous.
It didn't have a tape in it. Those were way too expensive.
It had a long cable on it that you had to attach to a VCR.
Had two rather large boxes, bigger than a modern day VHS, if they still have those.
Either someone would be holding it and carrying it if we were in some really tough terrain, or we'd put it in a wheelbarrow and just drag it behind us.
The batteries for the VCR never worked. The VCRs always had to be plugged into the wall. So I remember we were doing a kind of John Carpenter Halloween point of view of the killer kind of sequence for the Wisconsin Weed Eater Massacre, and we were going up the stairs and through the hallway with the camera. What that meant was there was someone behind the camera carrying those boxes and dragging the extension cord along with it. There's a shot in the Wisconsin Weed Eater Massacre that kind of makes fun of the whole situation where Greg is kind of walking by carrying the extension cord. That was pretty much what we had to do at the time.
That was that Minolta. It did have that title, I mean, but it was just that really bit-mapped, real basic stuff. Before that, we would just write people's names on a poster board and run it past the camera.
We did not have editing equipment, so what that meant was you had to shoot the film in sequence.
And if this scene was messed up, you had to go back, rewind the tape back, pause at the end of the last scene, and refilm it. It was very problematic because it created choppiness. If you didn't pause it exactly right, it created some static in there. And also, you could erase scenes.
Let's face it, in this day and age, you could shoot a movie on an iPhone and edit it on a Macintosh, and visually it would look better than anything we did on VHS back then.
Sorry, Dad.
You always see old movies Spielberg did with his 16mm camera. Hell, those guys had to go take it down the street to get it developed, right? So I guess every generation gets it a little bit easier.
Most people who saw The Undead Milkman didn't realize it was me. And my makeup basically consisted, I think, of putting talcum powder in my hair, some type of white makeup on my face to make myself look pasty, and then I smeared some black makeup around to look like I hadn't shaved and was sort of gross. And then I put a pillow in my shirt, and I think I puffed my cheeks out or held my chin in or something like that to make my face look really fat.
Stephen clearly had in his mind what he wanted to be. I think he probably was emulating someone he knew.
The inspiration, I think, was a collection of dislike of authority figures growing up as teenagers. Gym coaches or sports people or neighbors, and they were bossy, hypocritical men who would like to go yell at teenagers and tell them they were stupid.
If you don't hurry up and get a job, I think I'm just going to kick you out. You know you're over 18.
I think it's pretty safe to say he was probably the better actor of all of us if you had to point to somebody. He intellectualized his characters a little bit more than the rest of us, for lack of a better term.
Our son Desmond has seen the Undead Milkman, and you can kind of see the impact of Stephen's lines through him. Every time the doorbell rings at our house,
Martha, answer the door.
Desmond will say, "Martha, answer the door."
She was sort of like the washed up, worn out housewife who just didn't care and went through life like a robot. One thing people ask me is, what's up with this guy who's always dressed up as a woman? What's his deal? John wanted to get the movies made, so he said, all right, no one wants to be the woman, I'll be the woman.
That is utterly disgusting! That is so foul it makes me want to vomit!
It was kind of like the Monty Python guys. We saw them and they would dress up as women. So I just kind of emulated that. Billy, Willie, what have I done? It was just my thing. It was my shtick.
The wig appeared in countless movies, and it was always there. And I think whenever John played a woman, he wore that wig. Bubba probably epitomized all of us a little bit, because I think all of us probably did better academically than most.
Maybe soon I'll be elected as the Scientist of the Year.
I think he was also an anti-hero, because in all horror movies, there's always something that you like about the main character who's fighting the monster. Instead, our hero fighting the monster was this super nerd who screamed like a girl when he fought.
Jared's character is probably the funniest guy in the whole movie, I think. Something about Jared's character was so weird that, and he played him so spastic.
Jared just made him up entirely, and we really had no idea what he was going to do, but the end result was incredible.
I probably had 15 minutes of prep. Here's your part, and here's what you're going to do, and here's what you're going to say, and I would just go along with it.
Morning, Ma.
Maybe I did my hair a different way, but that's about it. Grab a pair of nerdy glasses.
Dang, these glasses keep falling off.
Was it Roy? Why was it Roy? Who's Roy? Nowadays, we'd lay that out real nice on the computer, and it would look perfect and realistic. At the time, everything was handwritten.
I take credit for the peeling skin.
We had figured out to put Elmer's glue on my face and let it dry and then peel that, and that looked a lot cooler. Someone in Hollywood should use that. And then we painted myself with some green camo paint that we got from the army store. I just kind of went, just moaned the whole time. I didn't say anything. I think I said, Milkman.
Who is it? Milkman!
That was all the zombie could muster.
We were like, Ed has to eat something real disgusting here, and somebody went into John's dad's refrigerator and grabbed this cottage cheese and squeezed margarine and just brought it out.
Cottage cheese, my favorite.
That's one of the classic scenes in everybody's mind. Ed is talking to Martha, and he goes like, "Aye."
Okay.
And I never noticed it.
Whatever you say.
Yeah.
I don't know why yep was so funny, but that was a good line.
Greg pointed out, and he kept seeing me going like, "Aye." And it's become stuck in my head now, where I think I say that to people now instead of yes sometimes. I go, "Aye."
Yeah.
Even though Ed is this fat slob who sits at home all day watching soap operas and drinking beer, he tells his son what a worthless degenerate he is, even though his son apparently is really smart.
Dad, I'm sick of you talking to me like that. I'm going to work on my microchip.
Oh, just go ahead and do that. I don't care.
Ed had pissed him off, and so he went to his lab in the garage to work on his centrifuge.
This centrifuge is really interesting.
We probably just dug through shelves until we found what I think was a utensil holder for a kitchen countertop. And someone said, well, just call it a centrifuge. And so that's what we did.
Who is it? Milkman! Oh, okay.
had a close-up of me breaking the bottle, and then I slashed in front of the camera. Martha laid down, and we put a line of ketchup on her face, like her face got slashed up.
Martha, who's at the door?
He's like, damn it, Martha, where are you? Or something like that. And that's when I snuck in. He turned around and started screaming. So I stabbed him, and that was one of the cooler effects. We had one of the ketchup bottles in his gut with a little opening somehow in the front where he started squeezing real hard, and the ketchup started spraying. It went all over the walls. And I mean, I don't know how we cleaned all that stuff up because he really squeezed it hard.
I think we used ketchup because that was all we had.
That was right when like Heinz was going away from those glass bottles, and they had just come out with the squeeze bottle. So, I mean, even if you weren't making a movie, you were spraying that ketchup on something. I don't know why.
We thought it was cool. We had this squeeze ketchup, and you could spray it out, and it looked like blood.
It's right here. It's in the fridge. It's free. Let's just use that instead of trying to figure out how to make real fake blood. When I stab him and he falls out of the chair on the ground, the bottle falls over, and I reach down and stab him again, and he kind of laughs. And then I kind of just get up and walk towards the camera, I think, and
Bubba and the Undead Milkman have one of the most classic and unusual fight scenes in the history of movie making. I don't know how we came up with it. I don't know if we planned it out or if it was ad-lib.
Most people didn't catch that line forever until I kept pointing it out when he'd scream, "Gotta get the machete!" Everyone's like, he says that? I go, yeah, listen, it's crazy.
The machete line, I think that just came out of nowhere. A lot of people felt like that's where Bubba's character really developed. Or somebody wanted for Greg's hand to get chopped off. That was an important component of the scene.
Bubba's screaming and shrieking and acting like a little girl the entire time.
The other important component of the scene was for Bubba to somehow find himself lying on the ground with his glasses off. Basically impending death.
Enter Chuck Dorcas.
We had to end it somehow, so we had Chuck Dorcas come in on the hood of a car.
And that's when John does just another one of our stunts that no one really gave any thought to safety. Came in flying too, and jumped off and kicks the Undead Milkman into the wall and unloads his machine gun on me. So that was the big graphic ending. It seemed like every movie we had a different special effect we wanted to try out. And we were all, you know, more than willing to be the guinea pigs for any of these things.
We're trying to capture the illusion that the Undead Milkman's being shot in the chest by a machine gun.
Wouldn't that be cool if it went pop, 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 you know, like it was going down, blowing up down me.
Somebody got their hands on some gunpowder. It was much easier to get back then. And we found out how to make these little explosive packets go off. And I won't discuss how to do it, because we probably don't want anyone to know how to do that nowadays.
A little square of tinfoil that you could put the gunpowder in and keep it in a ball shape long enough to get the tape started around the outside.
And put like a flash bulb or something in it, some kind of fuse inside of it, and wrap it with tape. And when you lit it, it made this kind of nice pop explosion. It was like a big firecracker.
At least 3 explosives on Greg's chest, maybe 5.
And we just thought, okay, these are just going to be little pops like normal.
Now we took a lot of safety precautions. We got a piece of cardboard and we put it in Greg's chest to protect him from the explosion.
And then we taped these bombs all along it. The first one was like up here. And the wires to them went down my pants leg and off the screen.
They were all attached to nails driven into a 2x4 that were attached to a battery. And the idea was John had a nail in his hand. And he was going to go along to each nail and complete the circuit.
This is the way we can do the pop, pop, pop quickly.
And cause the explosion to go off in Greg's chest.
So I backed up against the wall and kind of went back like this right when, you know, when they're about to say action, and John set off, the first one went off and it just blew. It was loud. It sounded like a shotgun going off in the garage.
There was sort of a pause, and then Greg started screaming and yelling.
And went running out of the smoke.
With this trail of wires and battery and every other thing.
I remember that John's dad had a pool in the back, and I thought, I'm on fire, so I'm going to run back there.
So Greg jumped in there, and he was yelling about his arm, and we didn't know what had happened to him.
finally calmed down and got out, and I was shaking because it hurt bad.
As it turns out, the cardboard actually worked. The cardboard protection on his chest protected his chest from when the bomb went off. The problem was that the hot explosive stuff got trapped under his shirt, went to the side of the cardboard, then went down his arm.
My shirt was all burned all up here, totally burned off, and my arm was black and red and black all over under here. The hair under my arm was all gone.
Went down his shirt sleeve and severely burned his arm, gave him third-degree burns. And it was not good.
I wasn't sure how bad it was, but it looked pretty nasty, and it hurt like hell. So we calmly drove to the hospital.
And we go inside to the check-in table, and the nurse looks up, and she sees Greg, and he's still wearing the zombie makeup, and she just freaks out. In total Greg style, he says, "I'm a burn victim."
The doctor was like, "Wow, what happened to you?" I mean, it looked like I had been shot with a musket or something. You know, it was like a Civil War wound. By the time we told him, finished how I had gotten hurt, this poor guy was like, "What are you doing? You know, you guys are idiots." You know, there was no sympathy whatsoever. You know, I laugh like crazy about it now because that's one of those boys will be boys kind of stupid things that I think every kid probably goes through. I'm amazed that's all that ever happened to us with all the stuff we were blowing up back then.
I was the one setting off the explosives, and for some reason after I detonated that first one, I stopped. I don't know if it was the loud boom that it made or what, but I stopped. And I was this close to setting off the other 2 or 3 or whatever it was. And that's what I often think about, is what would have happened if I would have detonated the other explosives. I don't know. You know, might have killed him. I don't know.
The thing that's more upsetting than the explosion was that the damn camera, if you're on pause for more than like 2 minutes or something, they stop because the tape gets too tight and it'll break or tear or something. Before the explosion, all that, no one noticed that the tape in the machine had stopped already, so we didn't even film the damn thing. I was like, God.
We'd never caught that scene on tape. And we have a movie now that isn't finished.
John put on this pretty cruddy looking mask to cover up his face. He tried to do his best to look like the Milkman. He then put his hand over his face.
We ended up throwing, I think, ketchup-soaked toilet paper wads at him, you know, and you could totally see him coming in from the screen.
That was the special effects we decided to do that day after we blew up Greg.
It was terrible. It was a disappointing ending. It would have been much cooler if you'd seen the Undead Milkman blow up the way I did, the way I actually did. It was pretty painful.
I recognized at some point that all horror movies had to have music, or it was just boring.
It's that god-awful baby trumpet that did Mary Had a Little Lamb.
And you would push the keys on the trumpet, and it would go this ding, 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 ding. And that was all John's idea. I frankly thought it was stupid. I was just like, whatever, all right, we'll do this. And it turned out to be great. It's just this bizarre thing that sets the tone of this strange music being played. John and Greg, as I understand, got together with John's father's Wurlitzer organ.
Your dad had that organ that we used to goof with that had all the goofy background beats to it. You know, stuff like, yeah, and we did that rumba thing.
We had the ending, which was screwed up by where we blew up Greg, but there's this perfect transition from the Undead Milkman getting blown away to this bizarre music that I think Greg made up on his own.
Just tapping along. There wasn't any thought to it.
And it's perfect. It's such a strange transition at the end of the movie. Sometime after we made the Undead Milkman, probably within a year or so, we heard about a film contest in the Houston area. So we submitted our film to that.
Greg did some artwork for the cover of the video to kind of make it look official. There were 1 or 2 other films that were entered into the contest. And one of them was this Star Wars spoof, and it had green screen effects, and it was just a lot more professional and polished than the Undead Milkman. So we came away with second prize.
I think people were kind of like, okay, that looks like a bunch of high school kids got a hold of Dad's camera and started spraying ketchup all over the house.
My oldest brother lived in LA, and he came to visit from time to time, and I showed him the Undead Milkman movie. He then went back to LA, and he happened to meet one of the judges from that contest, and the judge told him that he had seen one of the weirdest, most craziest movies he'd ever come across in Houston, and it was called The Undead Milkman. And my brother was like, my brother made that movie.
Harry Carey Productions was some kind of bogus production company that we came up with.
It was just another thing to make it look official. We have to have a production company. I don't know, we don't really even know what that meant, you know, when we'd see a movie, but at the beginning of every movie we saw there was so-and-so Productions.
Harry Carey Productions was a name that came up due to some association with the Japanese suicide technique of harikari or seppuku. It was tied to the early 1980s TV series Shogun. And in that movie, some Japanese samurai warriors, you know, killed themselves by sticking a knife in their stomach and cutting their guts out. And we all thought that was really cool.
We didn't know how to spell harikari. We didn't even know how to pronounce it, so we just kind of spelled it phonetically, and it kind of looks like someone's name. My mother was watching the nightly news, and she says, come in and watch this, and it's a segment about this guy named Harry Carey, who's the announcer for the Chicago Cubs.
He had the same name, and, well, we just stuck with it, because, you know, we were using it first. Oh, we made too many movies to remember, but the Wisconsin Weed Eater Massacre was a movie that I was not involved in.
I was the idiot yard man. It was a different time. It was a time of really over-the-top idiotic stereotypes and whatnot. They seemed funny at the time. Nowadays, I'm sure somebody would probably be offended by them.
Peperinsky and Smith was some kind of Starsky and Hutch duo that ran around doing some kind of crime fighting. I have no memory of making that movie, but I've seen it, and I know I'm in it.
I don't know, I can't think of any except some I don't want to talk about.
One of our movies that we made was a James Bond spoof, and in that I kind of expanded my acting horizons. Instead of a woman, I played a male stripper.
It's time for the College Dropout Show!
The College Dropout Show was kind of our version of Monty Python's Flying Circus, and it consisted of skits. For instance, we had the Toxic Zombie.
Johnny Napalm, subtitled Escape from Cabrinka.
We were ad-libbing that whole movie, and there was some scene where I had to say, "You'll never escape," and then I felt like it needed escape from where?
From Cabrinka.
I don't know where the word Cabrinka came from.
Is this face ring a bell? Ha! Ding, 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 ding. You bastard! I'm gonna get you!
The Damians.
The Damians was a movie that we made up on the spot. We were trying to film, I think, the second half of Johnny Napalm, and it was raining, a torrential rainstorm, so we were stuck inside, and we somehow decided, let's make a dynasty-type soap opera. Strangely, the characters in the Damians matched up with those in the Undead Milkman, except they were much more cleaner.
I was again the son, and Stephen was again the dad, and John again was the mom.
That swing was meant for me, but instead you chopped off the head of our beloved son Malcolm. You do it for our money? Yes. Yes? Huh. Guess what? I don't have any money. I'm broke. Now you're going to jail and you killed your only son for nothing.
The cool thing about the College Dropout Show was that we made it with equipment from the cable access station. So we had access to much nicer equipment, including editing equipment.
The four people involved in making the Undead Milkman weren't the entire group. It was this big giant group of people. The four of us tended to be in a lot of the movies, but we certainly weren't in all of them. And there were always people who wanted to be in them.
There was Dan.
Pay for your ticket! Who are you?
There was Jim.
It's just stuck! It's over!
There was Chris.
Thanks for doing business with us.
Kevin.
Peprinsky! Smith!
Nuke, that was our cousin at the time. He was in the Weed Eater Massacre. It was him in the trash bag.
Because I'm supposed to look like a psycho.
Pat was in that same movie, another friend of ours.
Oh, I wish I had a stick.
Gee, Bob, where are we supposed to put this toxic waste?
There was Mark.
Noel, I only been working here 17 years, and already I got a position of responsibility.
And his little brother Michael joined us too.
No! I must do it for the sake of the free world. And Johnny.
There was Jimmy. There was Craig.
The gin and tonic, Mr. Damien.
Craig also ended up doing the music for the College Dropout show.
Basically, just whoever was within arm's reach. If we needed another character, we'd grab them and snatch them up for whatever role we needed played.
There was no direct benefit to making these movies. We never made any money off of them. We probably lost a lot of self-esteem from making them.
It was something free and easy to do. It was something different. It was something fun.
I had a great time doing it. I think everyone else did too. And nothing was funnier in the world than when you were done, you could all sit back and watch the final thing. I mean, I still laugh at some of those stupid things nowadays.
My family members always thought I was a little crazy. After I got married, they asked my wife if she knew about the movies, and she said yes, and they asked her if she knew about them before she married me, and she said yes, and they were like, why did you marry him?
Don't you contradict me, woman!
I think I found out for the first time in my life that you can become so immersed in your work that the work doesn't seem like work anymore.
Looking back, it's a lot of stuff that they do nowadays. It's just, it wasn't really well done, and the camera itself wasn't that great, but it was applaudable that we tried, you know. It was trying to be crafting. We were trying to craft a movie, you could say.
In making these movies, we learned a lot about how to get organized, how to, you know, make something happen, how to work together, how to coordinate activities.
I do, you know, advertising now, so I shoot TV commercials all the time, you know, and me and the director work together on them and set up shots and everything like that, and it comes back to a lot of the stuff we did before, you know, with Undead Milkman. Now, it seems like there's zombie stuff all over TV and the movies everywhere. I like to think we inspired somebody. I doubt it.
Well, I live in Denver with my wife and kid. I'm still making films and still trying to look for ways where, you know, making films can help to contribute to putting some food on the table.
I'm an engineer. I have a business here in Houston. I left Houston for college, but found myself back here and never felt the need to leave. Parent of 2 kids and just doing my thing.
What are you doing nowadays?
We won't talk about that. I'll just say I ended up being an attorney.
Just had kids, so we're, you know, family. Maybe we'll get our kids together and they can remake the Undead Milkman using the technology of the time. That would be kind of funny. That'd be cool.